Welcome to the Master Channel podcast. I'm Dmitrievna, a Berlin-based music producer, live performer, and an avid supporter of Eastern European culture. Each week, I'll be talking to an interesting musician or a producer on the path to their creative mastery so that you can get inspired for your own journey. Are you ready? Here we go. Hi there, thank you so much for being here. It means a lot to me. I'm really excited to get the show started. My goal is to create a no bullshit platform for artists where we all can get real about our experiences and learn from each other. Hey guys, today's guest is DJ Speedsick. DJ Speedsick is a recording artist based in the Midwestern United States. His music could be referred to as damaged hardcore rave techno and anxiety-inducing minimalist tape manipulation. Experimenting with unorthodox production methods with a focus on narrative dynamics, his project explores the existential politics of contemporary life, hyperstimulation, and postmodern human survivalism. DJ Speedsick has released his debut Odyssey 97 on a Texas label called Breathing Productions, and after having released 5 cassettes last year, he'll be releasing his first 12-inch record in late 2018. And he'll be also launching his new label imprint called Snake Eyes and Sevens. In today's episode, we are covering so many topics. We are discussing lo-fi music production techniques and the role that lo-fi music plays in today's society in general, why it might be important to detach yourself from your local music scene, and how to stop pleasing people around you. That's a big one. We also talk about what are the chances of making a living with dance music in the United States, along with how some musicians in America use identity politics as a means of competitive advantage and why it's really important for artists to maintain their integrity. This is a long one, just saying that in advance, but I didn't want to cut anything because I found everything we talked about super interesting. So I hope you're going to enjoy this one. But hey, DJ Speedsick, amazing to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm sorry it took us so long to do this.
It's all good. We just had some technical problems for the audience, but you couldn't hear any of that. So can you tell me how did the beginning of your music journey look like?
Well, the beginning of DJ Speedsick started about a little over a year ago. Before that, I've been making music since I was I want to say 10 or 12 or something. But I got really into punk music and metal and stuff when I was a teenager and started playing guitar and totally taught myself and never really played music with people. I kind of just did it for myself and started fucking around with recording and stuff myself. And that's where I always started. And then through my I played in some hardcore bands and some metal bands that had done tours and stuff, and we played a lot in Wisconsin, where I'm from originally. And then I briefly lived in Chicago. Well, not briefly, 7 years. But I was pretty involved with the music scene there, but I don't really think I was doing music that I was my heart was in. I kind of can admit that I was just trying to participate in the scene and not really learning what I was doing or trying that hard to learn what I was doing or not even thinking I had to, I guess. But I don't know, about a year ago I had not been doing a music project or anything. I had been DJing a little bit, just on Tractor and kind of learning how to use CDJs and shit, but it wasn't really something I was taking too seriously. But I ended up with a sampler that a roommate had, and he just owed me some money for rent, so he traded me that to score up on it. And good deal if you ask me. But yeah, I just at first I had no idea how something like a sampler, a sequencer, MIDI stuff that was just way over my head and always kind of had been. But then I just I know last winter I had a lot of free time and it was really fucking cold in Chicago, and so I wasn't leaving the house and just kind of didn't have anything to do and started fucking around with that. And that was a good time in my life when I was pretty confused about what I was doing with myself and creatively and stuff. And I felt everything had kind of changed, or whatever idea I had of that had died. And I don't know. And then I ended up at some party in Wisconsin last Halloween, actually, and Halloween 2016. And just had an experience that was really profound for me that kind of made everything make sense to me for a second. And I had just like a lot of ideas for the first time in my life that like I wanted to like execute, and I couldn't find somebody else doing it to listen to do it. I couldn't listen to somebody else doing it. So I had to like take it upon myself. And that's kind of where DJ Speedsick started. But also, like, I had started uploading like a series of like kind of really weird noise pieces to SoundCloud. Like, it was just it was just like me like experimenting with tape players and 8-tracks and like opening up tapes and taping, making them so they would like be tape loops, and processing them through all sorts of weird different, just like random shit I had that had some kind of function in a musical context. And I didn't actually like plan to make DJ Speedsick be a thing. Like, it was just this like kind of goofy name I put on a SoundCloud and uploaded some like fucking weird music to. And I posted a link to it or something, and people found it and really enjoyed it. And I was like really taken aback that people were into it, because I wasn't really like trying to make something that was, I didn't think that this was going to be a project or a thing, or that was going to be a name I was going to use. I was just kind of having fun and in a weird place in my head where I was totally just isolated. And I don't know, interestingly enough, I think that kind of translated and people were interested in it. And then Rusty from Breathing Problem Productions just texted me. He's like, dude, let's do a tape, like a DJ Speedsick tape. And I'm like, oh, fuck, okay, yeah, like, let's do this, I guess. And so I kind of just like that ended up being Odyssey 97, which was my first release. It was just a lot of different like demos and experiments that I'd been working on and like recorded, and I was using all these different like weird tape players that I'd found at thrift stores and stuff that I had since I was like a teenager and shit. So I was recording everything there, and then I made like a little like compilation of tracks that I'd been working on between like January and I think it was January and February of last year, and then that went on to be what DJ Speedsick is now.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, well that's some background story right there.
Yeah.
Well, so as far as I understand, it sounds like you went kind of from the metal scene or the more like instrument heavy scene to the electronic music.
Yeah.
What was the moment that happened during that Halloween, or was kind of the kind of transition that you made? Like, what inspired you to be like, okay, now I'm gonna fuck with like these, I don't know, machines,
Well, yeah, I mean, I did come from like the metal and the punk scene, but my interest in music has always been like very like, it's been everywhere. It's not just limited to that. I think that was just like where I come from. Like, I come from a pretty small place, not a very creative place in Wisconsin. And that was just kind of like the only thing that was going on that I had in common with people, where I could kind of channel something that I was interested in doing, but that really wasn't it necessarily. Like, I think that was like a stepping stone into what I was actually trying to do, but that's kind of where I first started getting the ideas and was able to like channel some of that stuff. But, I mean, I've been interested in electronic music and techno and stuff like since high school. I never really like made a full jump into like digging into the techno world and the electronic music world until a couple of years ago. But I was really into noise and like the harsh noise scene since like high school. I used to play in like a grindcore band, and Milwaukee has such a limited like there's not that much going on there. I mean, there is, but it's very like there's not that much experimental stuff going on. So we would always end up playing with these experimental like industrial like noise projects, just like my hardcore band. So that kind of exposed me to that side of things, which when I moved to Chicago and I was kind of a little bit involved with the punk scene, kind of doing my own thing. And then I found that there was some crossover into some of those guys doing hardcore and stuff would be doing noise stuff and industrial stuff, and we're into synthesizers. So I kind of started seeing that it was a little less like black and white, or there was less like, it was less compartmentalized than that there was people interested in different things. So, but yeah, anyways, as far as like my relationship with like how I make music, like, yeah, it was always very limited to guitar and bass and drums and stuff, which so I didn't really know how to use keyboards, and like the whole thought of like triggering notes on a synthesizer from a different controller or something, like it just doesn't add up. It didn't add up to me, and it still doesn't always make sense to me. But I think then I think that when I got more into noise and stopped playing guitar for a while, or just wasn't doing it often, kind of hearing that there's qualities to like sound, not just the sound that is made from a guitar or a bass or something, that you can kind of like hear things, that things start to kind of bleed together. And then which maybe stop looking at things in terms of like notes being on a fretboard and whatnot. So you can find things. I started I don't even know how to describe it necessarily, but I don't really think in terms of like musical notes and music and stuff. I think it's more of like what I hear in it that interests me, which is how I wrote music as like a guitarist. Like it didn't always make sense necessarily in like a technical standpoint to me, but I could, when I could find a way to make a sound that I liked, and it was what I was trying to find more or less, I could do it. And that's kind of how like making the transition from like, punk and noise and stuff into techno and electronic music worked, because whether or not I knew how I was getting the sounds I wanted, I knew when I had them. So it was just a lot of experimenting and a lot of fucking around with whatever I had and whatever I could find to do that. So, but yeah, the machine stuff still kind of doesn't make sense to me, just because I'm not somebody who can sit down and watch like a YouTube tutorial on how to use Ableton or like how to use synthesizers. Like my mind just doesn't work like that. So it's like, it's more like I have an unorthodox way of finding, of like learning things, and I have to do it my own way. So it's kind of difficult, and it still is like a struggle that I have, because sometimes when it just doesn't come naturally or nothing's clicking, I get really frustrated and like, fuck this. Like, I'm not smart enough for this shit. Like, I can't talk to anybody because the way my understanding of everything is so weird and radically different than the way it actually is supposed to be communicated about. So, but I don't know if that answers your question so much.
I find that, like I also feel like I don't know necessarily how things are in terms of like music theory, or I don't know how things are supposed to work, but that like the not knowing brings you to different results than what people who know have, you know what I mean? So
absolutely. And that is actually what made this project so much fun for me, because I don't know about fun, but what made it, so there's been a lot of people in my life that understand music and have studied music in a way that like they know how it's supposed to be, like what the rules and laws and like things you're supposed to do for music are, like how you're supposed to mix and master and EQ, and how you're supposed to use instruments and drum machines. And like those people, I feel like when I was first doing this project, because I mean the way I was doing everything, and I still kind of do everything, is super unorthodox. Like the way I like mix my shit and like how I record it, it's just like it makes no sense. It's like maybe the opposite of what you're supposed to do. And people that think that way have been like total detractors to this project. Like, this is mixed badly, there's too much bass here, blah 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 blah, like this is all clipping. It's just like, yeah, but when you stop thinking, if you can detach yourself from that kind of thinking, I think that there's like an emotional side of it, and like a very cathartic side of it that a lot of people have been drawn to. And that's how I find what I'm happy with, is when I have done something that I can feel, not if I can like, if it passes, it checks out, it like would get an A in a class or something. Like, fuck that. I don't think like that. I never have. So like, but yeah, I think that we're on the same page with that.
Yeah, I noticed that like your tracks like aren't mixed that well, or like, it's just like really rough.
Yeah, totally.
I was wondering if that's like on purpose, or
Yeah, it is on purpose, but not in the sense that like I want to make this sound
bad,
like bad, or like I want to do this the wrong way. It's like there is no wrong way for me. It's usually just like, if I'm happy with it and it sounds like if it has like a feeling that if somehow I can encapsulate a feeling that I feel like I'm stuck on, or I was trying to channel when I was making something, then I feel like I've accomplished what I'm looking for. Not if it's mixed the way that a studio would mix it. Like,
it's very freeing.
Yeah, it is very freeing. And I think that something about that is like, I really just, I try to make my music like take on, so using electronic music, it's like using technology and stuff is very unnatural, And I think that kind of reminds me of like an urban environment. Like when I was living in a city and shit, then I felt really out of place, and like I just wasn't like I felt really like not at home, you know? So the way I kind of destroy my music using like tape players and analog stuff, like it kind of gives it a more natural feeling that I can connect with a little bit better, you know? Like the way it's blown out, but it doesn't sound digital and it doesn't sound like mechanical. It has like this like organic, like naturalistic like feeling to it, which is kind of what reminds me of where I'm from and where I live now, you know? Like it's kind of just green and organic and not just like a fucking like unnatural city full of technology and bullshit like that. Like so kind of degrading something, like beating something and like wearing it down until it's like kind of become like part of like it has like a feeling that reminds me of like what inspired me and what created me as like a human or something is what I try to go for. Yeah, that's so philosophical, but
It's so cool. Well, I feel like in general lately in techno, they always talk about like raw, you know, and like
that just means badly
unclean
recorded. Fuck that.
and unclean and like we don't do this clean techno. Like this, it's like a bad, like it's like a swear word, like clean techno.
Clean techno, yeah.
Everyone's like talking about these like making things sound organic, and to me it's like I don't know, like it's industrial music. Like to me it's just like doesn't make sense like something like that industrial could sound organic, you know what I mean?
Right, that's the point. I mean, well, yeah, but there's something to that though, because like the way I always felt about like about like industrial music is it's like listening to it's creating some kind of like music out of the sounds of the machines that you feel like are gonna replace you on Earth someday. You know, it's very dark, it's very dystopian. But like when you think of like where industrial music comes from and like the kind of lower class like blue collar worlds across like in America and in the UK and shit, and like they were, you know, it's people that were working in factories and stuff, and they sit there all day hearing these machines go over and over and again, and you start like finding music in this sound, you know, that's like of these like of this thing that's bigger and smarter than you that is gonna like, you know, that humans shouldn't have made, but now we have, and we don't know what to do with technology anymore, and it's like killing us, and it's like destroying the world that we live on, that we occupy, and it's like this kind of perverse like Stockholm syndrome where you like you fall in love with those sounds and like want to like recreate those sounds of like the machines that are gonna destroy us. I don't know. It's some fucking like crazy shit. But back to, I mean, to kind of what you were saying is like all the music that I feel like I was really attracted to, and I have been attracted to, like black metal and death metal and punk and noise and stuff, and like that's mostly music where you couldn't fucking pay a studio. You didn't have enough money to pay a studio that to record you, so you had to do it yourself. Like you had to just use whatever you had sitting around, you know. And like I'm somebody who I'm not like a person who like I can't save up for like a nice recording interface or for a nice microphone. I would much rather just find whatever I can that can accomplish the task that I have in mind. You know, I'm so impulsive. Like when an idea comes to me, I have to do it now. Like I cannot wait. I cannot like go to work minimum wage at a fucking job I hate for like weeks and weeks just to be able to afford something so I can do something I want. It's like it's never been like that. So it's everything I've recorded I've used with something that I had in like that was immediately available to me, whether it was like a friend or like borrowing me something, or just like, I mean, like my first tape, like I recorded that all on a boombox that my parents had at the house I grew up in. Like I somehow ended up with that boombox in Chicago and kept it and like recorded everything onto there because it was the only thing I had that I could record music onto. And like that's how it sounds fucking dirty and gross, but that's like, and like that's because like that's what that thing sounded like. That's a recording music. That's what recording music onto that device sounded like, and that's all I had to do it with, and that's just how it is now. So there's this like drive to be immediate, and like I have to do this now. I have to use whatever I can to make this sound or like to execute this idea, and that's kind of what I think that like throughout a lot of the music that's been really influential to me has had a similar characteristic to it, or has like been recorded with a similar like in like a similar context, you know, or like somebody just had a tape player. They wanted to record a song that was on their mind, or they wrote something and pressed record and used whatever they could to do that. And like, I think that like, that's what I've been attracted to is like that very like cathartic, like immediacy. So I've been able to record music. I like trying to do the same thing, and that just happens to sound lo-fi and gross and dirty. Whereas like shit where it's like super high fidelity, and you've like, obviously you have to have gone to like some kind of fucking school or spent hours and hours and hours learning how to make music sound right or good, you know. Like I've never had that like privilege or that opportunity. I mean, I kind of did it when I went to college, but I knew that I wasn't going to be able to do that. I was just going to fucking hate what I was doing if I had to start thinking about it that way. So I didn't, you know. And like, and I think that the reason that there's starting to become a backlash against that kind of music is because it's you have to have like a certain kind of like knowledge and skill set that isn't accessible to everybody who can either afford to learn about it, or B, like just isn't able to like dedicate that much time to learning how to make music sound clean and beautiful and like the way that record companies want them to and studios think it's supposed to be recorded. And like that, I don't know, I think that like that kind of represents like a commodification, or like our like this music that we're interested in being commodified and turned into this like designer high-end product that isn't accessible to just like the average person anymore, you know. Whereas when things aren't like that, when you're using whatever you can and doing it however you want to, it has a more like human element that like that like the general population or anyone that's just interested in this and like can hear it can connect with and relate to, which is why like, yeah, I think like the resurgence of raw and lo-fi music is the way it is, because it doesn't feel like it, you don't feel so detached from it, or you don't feel so like you can't do this or you can't appreciate this because you don't understand how it's supposed to be. You know, when you kind of break that down, it turns into this more like raw kind of like, I don't know, like it's like it becomes the people's music again. It's no longer just like people that know how to do it can do it. And I don't know, I've been kind of like happy to be part of that and be able to do it like that. And like, because I think it's helped me connect with people, and people have been able to connect with me more because of that outlook, and just kind of saying fuck you to like the, you know, the Berghain techno, like the big room shit, you know. I mean, it's fun for what it is, but you know, I don't fucking care. It sounds like a robot's making it. I fucking hate robots. So
Wow.
Anyways,
well,
sorry, I talk a lot.
That's interesting, like the connection you make with like people's music and lo-fi, like internet lo-fi music, like
Yeah, but I also think it sucks when you're just trying to replicate that for like fetish value, you know, like on fucking electrons, like Octatracks, you can have a lo-fi filter. It's like, fuck that, dude. Just like like why do you need like that? That's so like fucking gross to me.
What do you think is your biggest struggle right now?
Right now, oh my God, there's a lot of fucking struggles in my life right now. I mean, I don't know. I guess all it really, like the biggest thing that I'm not struggling with anymore, and this used to be my biggest struggle, was like existing in the context of like a music scene, because I totally like am not doing that anymore. So like my problems are no longer like what's going on with the show or what does this person think of, you know. It's like it's no longer stuff that pertains to the music world. It's more like, I'm 25, what the fuck am I doing with my life? I just burnt 7 years of my life doing nothing, and like
can you talk more about the scenes? Like, yeah, you were talking a lot about like playing gigs and like trying to participate in local scenes. Like, have you like departed from that, and what are you doing instead of that now?
No, yeah, I used to be pretty involved with just like, I don't know, a music scene that was isolated to a location, you know, like a city's music scene. And I think that the more somebody focuses on a city's scene and what what a particular music scene and like that they are physically and creatively a part of, the more you do that, the less that you will ever go anywhere but that scene. And unless that scene is what you want, you are actually interested in being in your entire life, which there's nothing wrong with that. Like, if you want to do that, then do that, you know. But I personally, I don't like, for as long as I was involved in like, or like within some proximity to a music scene, I always just felt like this isn't actually my people. Like these aren't, I don't really care what these people think, because I don't really think they appreciate it, you know. And like what happened is when I like kind of I basically, when DJ Speedsick started going well, and I realized that there was like an interest in it, and it's something that maybe it could start. Because all I've ever wanted to do is travel, and all I've ever wanted to do is be able to like make music as much as possible, without having to work shitty jobs, to live in shitty apartments, to live with shitty roommates in a shitty neighborhood. It's like, and then never have any money to do anything else, which is what life in a city's like. Like, I wanted to not do that. So it's like, fuck, I need to get out of here. Like, I need to go and I need to pursue this. Like, I need to not fucking waste my time and get distracted by everything that's going to only make doing what I want to do harder by thinking I have to be here. I have to live in this city. I have to play these shows or go to these shows and know these people in this city. Like, that just didn't seem to make sense anymore. Or it was just like, it was so obvious that was like the only reason I wasn't doing the things I wanted to do. So yeah, I left, and like, honestly, like, it's been one of the best things that's ever happened to me, because I have time to do what I want to do now. And like, I don't get distracted by bullshit. I get lonely as fuck, and it's weird being somewhere where there's just not that many people that like you, or not like you, but like, that are like you, and like that.
Do you live in a
understand
like,
what you're doing.
town than Chicago?
Yeah, I live in a much smaller town than Chicago. Madison, Wisconsin it's a college town, so there's a university here, so that's kind of what the city's based is like. That's kind of why there's like, what brings people to the city is college. And I'm 25, so I've been out of college for 3 years now. I have no connection to college life, but it's cool because it's also kind of a little hippie town, and it's also where like a lot of the old rave scene from like the 90s in Wisconsin like is living now. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of interesting people here. It just it's not a huge like thriving like music scene, it's like, it's just people doing what they want to do and they're happy with doing. And that's why that's why I like living here, because there's no pressure is what it feels like. There's no like feigned pressure or fake pressure. It's like, you're just kind of existing on your own terms at your own speed, doing what you want to do when you want to do it. And then again, what that's opened me to do is I've been able to travel, like, and I've been able to find people across the world and like the country that like are interested in what I'm doing. It's no longer just the people in my city, it's the people in like in just the world, and then I've got to meet those people and get to know those people and travel to see them and hang out with them and play with them, and that's been so much more rewarding and so much more exciting and creatively like stimulating than staying one place has ever been, and staying one place. Yeah,
absolutely.
Totally.
Like, I think about this a lot, because I feel like I will never really be accepted by any of the scenes that's currently like happening in Berlin. And because I make kind of like techno pop, and
I've listened to it. It's awesome.
And the main two scenes right now here are like, it's either the techno house scene or it's the experimental club, like R&B, kuduro, stuff like that.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
And like, I'm not techno enough for the techno world, and I'm like not poppy R&B enough for the other scene.
Yeah.
But sometimes I feel kind of sad, because I want to be accepted between some of those circles, and I want to be kind of, I don't know, respected by some people. But it's definitely like, it's just Berlin in the end, and now that we have the internet, like your focus can be so much broader. And
the internet, it's the internet is what's doing it, and like, you can find people everywhere that you might not ever actually meet that like get what you're doing and understand it and are totally on the same page as you.
I actually like I don't know if you know Bolitra.
I actually helped a friend set up a show for him in Chicago.
Well, I talked to him, and he said that like I don't know, before he got like more popular, he didn't have any kind of scene in New York to like hang out with, and it more or less happened over the internet that he found people who were doing the same thing like he did.
Right. Yeah. Also, though, I think that, I guess a big mistake I made, I'll be honest, was like thinking that everybody that like is into the same music as me and like looks like me and has bad tattoos like me, like that we're all going to be friends, like this is my scene. Like, honestly, some of my like best friends ever, like either who like totally understand me creatively and I totally understand them creatively, make shit that's radically different than what I'm making. Like some of them make punk and noise and indie, just shit that like literally I wouldn't be caught dead making, like, but we get it, and there's like a universal like just understanding and appreciation for what we're doing. Like one of my best friends in Chicago is like a jazz and R&B and like soul DJ, and I just don't like I will never listen to that music, but like when he does it, I get it. It's cool. I can like feel it, you know, like I the energy excites me. And like and then there's all these other fucking people making this like noisy techno with, you know, a fucking industrial drum machine that Skinny Puppy probably used. It's just like and then I see it's like, God, you guys are fucking assholes. Like I just don't like it. But this is technically what I'm like. These people have the most like visually in common with what I'm doing, you know. But I don't feel like I have anything in common with them as musicians and shit, you know. And then when I went to New York and stuff and like kind of like hung out with the scene there, it's like those guys are. I mean, they're all more or less making this like they're making similar music, but they're not like, it's not like every guy who makes lo-fi or hard industrial techno like that they're all buddies, like, you know. It's like it's a little more vague than that, you know. And I think that when people identify too strongly with their music and the way their music sounds and expect everyone around them to be like that too, you get really lost because you're not actually being a human. You know, you're living as a product or something, and that's a really good way to be lonely, you know. But also, I don't know. But yeah, Bulger, like I definitely know what you're saying. Like I don't know New York scene that well or where he was fit into, but he definitely has his own thing going, and like that wasn't a popular like scene anywhere. And like, you know, like you eventually like see that like it doesn't have to be located somewhere. It can be everywhere, you know, and you can go everywhere if you want to.
Yes.
For sure. Also, like, but you know, I think what makes the music, like you were saying, how you don't really feel like what you're doing fits in Berlin, you know, or it's really like what people want to hear is what you were kind of saying. Like, I mean, all of this music wasn't that we're making when it started, when like in the very early days of anything before it became the genre that it is, it wasn't anything people wanted to hear. You had to kind of go out on a whim and do your own thing to make it, and now look what it's become, you know. You know, so I try not to think about it that way myself, because I don't want to, like, I'll get stressed out if I'm like, why don't people like what I'm doing when what I'm doing isn't actually anything that I have a reason to believe people would like, you know. Like you gotta trust yourself with it, and then people will, I think when people see like that you don't care about them is when they start caring, and then that is when shit gets cool. And that's what I tried to do, and I think it's working all right.
It's I mean, that's amazing if you can do that. I definitely feel the pressure to keep up, to be cool, you know. Like I see all those, like, I don't know, girls who are fitting into the trends of what is underground and artsy right now, the way they dress, and it's like, it was making me so like anxious. Like I'm, you know, you'd think like, oh, like you're so liberal, like you're not gonna get affected by like Instagram shit, but like actually I am, and I'm always like comparing myself, and it's just so hard to focus on like what you're doing and be like, okay, whatever, they can do whatever they want, but like I'm gonna do this for myself. It's just like, well, if you can do that, like, you're so brave.
I mean, honestly, that's what I was talking about earlier when I said I'd been making music to just participate. Like, I wasn't really trying to do my own thing. I was just trying to do what I was trying to like meet a quota of what was expected of me in a scene. But I guess like I did that for so fucking long, and it just like drove me crazier and crazier and made me more and more and more miserable. And like eventually I was just like, fuck this, like this is so awful. I'm just not cut out for being cool, you know, or being cool in like the way that people, like, you would think people would want you to be. And like, I mean, yeah, I just like, I don't dress. I don't think I look good dressing like the way people think that cool people dress. You know, I don't make the music. I'm not good at making music that's like cool music. I'm good at doing my own thing. And like, when I totally stopped thinking like that and like just stopped like looking like a raver, you know, stopped like trying to DJ the music people wanted to hear, trying to make the kind of music people wanted to hear. When it was just like, okay, I'm gonna start doing everything the way I want it to be. You know, I'm gonna like try to make the music I want to hear, because no one else is going to fucking do it. And I'm sick of like looking around waiting for someone else to make the thing I want to hear. It's like, I'm just going to fucking do it finally. And that's kind of how this happened. And also like, I mean, you've heard my music. Some of it's just like, it's totally minimal, weird noise that doesn't make any sense to anybody. And then some of it's like hardcore raving techno, you know, and like, but it's not noise techno crossover. I try not to make it noise techno, because that's a trend, you know, and I want to make music that kind of like, I want to make techno music that alienates noise people, and I want to make noise music that alienates techno people. So if you're willing to not look at things as one or the other, if you're willing to see that there's something in between all of it, then I want to, then you get it, and like, I don't really want to deal with anybody who is expecting one thing and not getting it. It's like, fuck you, like, stop asking me for things, like, don't have any expectations. Like, it's just like when you go in and you can finally just like get your head out of what things are supposed to be like or what you're expecting them to be like, and you can just enjoy things for what they are and who's making them and who you are, and like, then I think is like that's where things get kind of really interesting, because you totally lose control, and that's what makes interesting things happen, in my opinion. And that's what it's been like for me, at least.
Yeah, I've definitely like in the beginning I was trying to like figure out the way like more how to brand myself in order to like what kind of music should I do so that like I can be branded, and I was thinking like, like or sometimes I'll be like, this is too poppy, or like this is too techno, and it's not poppy enough, and I'm just like trying to put myself in those boxes, and I'm like, I'm more and more I'm seeing artists who are kind of doing whatever they want, and it just encourages me to be like, okay, like just do whatever you want. But it sounds so easy, but you get affected by a lot of things that kind of how you call this they're distracting you from that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you're also based in Berlin. It's like the techno capital of the world. It's like techno Disneyland. It's crazy. So like, I mean, that kind of thinking, like, I honestly, I mean, I can't imagine it to be easy. I actually imagine it to be like extremely difficult to get yourself out of those kinds of like boxes of thinking, because it's all that's around you, like it's so like it's suffocating when like you can't just think of things in your own way, because everything around you that you see and experience is like what you were describing, like the way that it like what's expected, or what it should be like, and like the boxes that you were talking about finding yourself in, like that's just because those boxes are everywhere, and like that's like in like places like that and scenes like that where you always like everything there is marketing, everything that everything does and everything you experience has been marketed in some way, shape, or form. So it's like it's kind of something it's like something you catch. It's like a disease you catch from being close to somebody. It's like you start thinking like that because that's how everyone's thinking about it. But it's also like that's like, I don't know, but like to try to like fight back against that isn't easy either, because no one can really tell you how to do it. You kind of just have to figure it out yourself, and like that's scary, and that's kind of going into the deep end, and especially if you're trying to like make a living off of music, or you got to like that like it's like that might not be that it probably won't go well if you try to detract yourself from like what can like provide a stable like presence in a music scene, or like maybe some money here or there. If you're going to do something that isn't anything like that, like that's going totally into the void. And like honestly, like to make that jump is like most people won't do it and can't do it. And like I think for a lot of people that do, like myself, I guess it's like I didn't really know anything else but that when I started doing it. I was so detached from what was cool and what people wanted, like as like a mental health condition, like I was just so out of it and like had totally lost hope with everything, that I was just like, it was like all there was in my world anymore for a period of time was just me and myself, like I couldn't hear anybody from the outside because I just lost touch with them, so it's like yeah, it was like a dark spell of like total isolation that made me finally like, that didn't feel like I was jumping into the void anymore. I was already there, and it just kind of carried me in that direction. So I'm not going to say that was a pleasant experience, because it fucking wasn't, but like I mean, when you have to stabilize yourself doing something that is totally opposite of what anybody's expecting, or what will work or function in a certain way, that's not something that's easy to do or pleasant to do either, and sometimes you might just not be able to do it. But I think that when you hit a certain point of like as a person, like existentially or philosophically, and your thinking just changes and you stop seeing the value in being like that, is when it can start to happen. And I think that like you're already starting to feel like that that you don't fit in there. Like you're closer than you probably were when you thought you might, like it could happen, and it'll happen naturally if it does. And so, I mean, I don't know, just maybe see what happens. I don't know. It's hard to predict, it's hard to give advice or anything with that kind of thing too, because it just happens differently for everybody,
Well, now that we talked so much about the scenes, but how would you describe like the current American techno scene specifically, because I have a friend who lived in Seattle and he moved from
Okay.
there to Berlin, and he was
Oh,
saying
cool.
that there's not much happening in the US. He said, like, he told me, like, yeah, you as a performer, like, it would be so much better for you to be in the US, but I have to move to Berlin kind of to move
Yeah.
for the techno scene.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I guess it all just kind of depends on what you want out of it. I mean, if I wanted to play tech, if I wanted to see techno happening 24 hour, like 24/7, I would totally move to Berlin, but I don't want to see that much techno, you know. But like, no, America, I don't know. It's not a good place to be a musician. I really don't think. I think that like the way our society works and how damaged it is by capitalism, that there just really isn't anything for musicians. And I think that like musicians can't make money making music here because there's no industry, or like, yeah, there's no industry that supports music or sees the value in music. I mean, it's
Really?
if you, I mean, depending on what you're doing, yeah, if you want to be in a fucking like cover band at a bar or something, yeah, then you'll make $100 a night. But like, no, there's no value on musicians, and there's like there are no big clubs in most places. You know, New York has a couple, LA hardly has any big clubs, Chicago has one. There's not just one, there's a lot of clubs, you know, but it's not like cool, and it's not like what most people want to do. It's like, it's what makes money, it's what makes enough money to keep the club open, you know. And if you don't think like that, and if you don't think in like in what works in a business context with music, because I don't really think music and business ever had that much in common, or should have been intertwined as deeply as they have been in America. There's not much for you here, you know. And like, being somebody, you can't like, I don't know, like I've traveled to play shows and it's cool, but like there isn't like a huge thriving like dance music scene like the way there is in Europe, you know, and like clubs that pay artists well, and like, you know, then there's like government grants for artists to like work and live, you know. If you're trying to make music here, you're gonna have to work a shitty job that doesn't respect you, because they know that job isn't your only priority. It's something else, like music is, and they don't. I mean,
Well, I think you might like idealize it a little bit in Europe. Like, I mean,
for sure, I've never been, so.
I'm like, most of the people I know are also working a really shitty job.
Oh, of course, yeah, no, I know.
But
Well, I'm just saying that I think that there's less to work for here, you know, because even if you work your shitty job, like the chances of your music taking off and you being able to live off of it is so much lower. Whereas in Europe, I mean, I've definitely known people that can pretty much get by with their music. It takes a while, you know, and you got to work really hard, and you're gonna have to put in a couple years of fucking struggling, of working, you know, working 12-hour days and then making music for 6 hours and sleeping 4 hours and doing that shit over and over again, you know. Like I've done that too. But when you don't actually see it going anywhere, there's not actually any, when there's so few people that manage to pull it off, you know, it's really discouraging, because like, how do you convince yourself to keep doing that if you don't just fucking love it, you know? And like, I think that what it comes down to in America is, yeah, there's a lot of people are getting pretty bored of the way things are or what's expected. And I don't know. It's really American DJs are really fucking like musicians in general are very cutthroat, and it's very brutal, and it's very like, people are kind of sketchy with the way they go about trying to get attention and get opportunities. Like, it's not really about just loving music and caring about it. And it's like how good of a DJ can you actually be? So when everyone is like that, everyone's like just pretty damn good, but no one's actually paying attention to how good they are. You know, it's like they got to find other ways to get attention and what to do. And like, I won't get into that, but I think that there's a lot of people exploiting each other and taking advantage of each other and doing really shitty things to get ahead of other people. And yeah, and if you don't think like that, you can't really keep up with it. You know, you don't know, you know, if you're just doing this because you're having fun, and you know, it's like, there's two different types of people. And like, I mean, there's lots of different types of people, but those are two you kind of find in the techno scene in particular. And like, I think what's happening right now in America that's really interesting is you're kind of starting to see this like resurgence of like very confrontational, like, I don't give a fuck attitude techno. Like, there's shit popping up in a lot of different places where these little like small groups of kids that are just totally dissatisfied with the music scene and the way that like dance music is working in America right now. They're starting to pop up out of nowhere. Like Los Angeles, like you have Burn Records down in Denver, Colorado, you have Gauze Records. In like in Nashville, Tennessee, you've got Virus Crew, and like there's all these little tribes of people popping up that are just like, we're gonna throw fucking crazy parties. Like it's not gonna be like what you'd expect at a club, but it's gonna be way cooler and it's way punker. And like that's kind of like what you saw happening back in the day, and like with Spiral Tribe in like the UK and in France, and then what you'd see with like Drop Bass Network in the Midwest back in the 90s was like people were just fed up with the way things were, and we're like, fuck it, we got to do this our own way. So it's not like, but what that does is it doesn't necessarily make this like hugely visible thing that like Resident Advisor can post about. It's like this thing where if you're feeling that way about music, you'll find it or it'll find you, and there's somewhere for you to go, you know. So it's starting to become like a little bit rebellious again, because it's become so not rebellious. It becomes such just like a business thing, you know. It's become so not real and not like emotional and not artistic that it's starting to like go back to the very bottom and like build its way back up again. So I think, but also like that's in its early stages right now, and like that has allowed me, I mean, the fact that that's happening, like that was kind of the mentality I had with my music, and it's how I've found a lot of the people in America that I've like gotten to know and become pretty good friends with, because we're all on the same page and we're all feeling the same way about the things are, but we didn't know each other until we started, you know, rebelling against that shit by making the music we are, that we all found each other, you know. So I think something cool's happening or coming, but that's only happening because things in like society and culture are getting so much worse, you know. Like
it's so interesting because I talked to like 3 people from Russia, and they were saying exactly the same. They said because things are going so crazy in there. There is a special energy that people have, and that there's hope that things are going to change, because like they said, literally they're in survival mode.
Yeah. Also, Russia is like going like I think it's like the 90s in Russia right now. Like you know, it's 2018 in America and Berlin, but I don't know. My ex-girlfriend's from Moscow, and she was pretty involved in the rave scene. And yeah, it definitely seems like that. But also the thing about Russia is it's like the mafia has such like a presence. I don't know if we should be talking about the mafia in a fucking podcast, but it seems like, okay, there's such like a different and like kind of sketchy way that their society and culture works, you know? So they have to kind of be like very guerrilla about everything if you want to do something. You know, it's like doing things the legal way is never the important thing. It's like how you can get away with what you're doing. So it's very much like a death drive, you know. It's like I will do this. I'm gonna, if I'm not gonna die for this, I'm not gonna do it, you know, kind of mentality. And yeah, but I don't know. I've met some really like awesome people from Russia, and I've like heard some really amazing music from Russia. Like a new artist that I'm like working with and have been like a huge supporter of, Drag, like Draag. I don't actually know how to, I've never tried to say it out loud until now, but yeah, he's from St. Petersburg, and his music is fucking amazing. And like there's Bud Techno from Moscow, who I've always really liked, and like, but then I don't know, it kind of, there is a side of that scene that kind of just feels like they're emulating like the fashion trends of the 90s, you know, of rave music, because that didn't actually happen there until now, you know. So now they're getting their wave of rave, so now they're like, oh, this is what it's supposed to look like, you know. It felt like there's like, for every like one person that's really down and really political and they're thinking about what they're doing and why they're interested in that music, there's like 100 people that are just trying to look the way that it does on Instagram, you know. And that goes for everything, you know. But I definitely you know.
Yes, definitely. Like I feel like it's happening everywhere. Just like in terms of like if any topic, just people jumping on something that's, you know, that's popular.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's totally real. But also it's because like the current generation, like us, like I don't know how old you are, but like
24.
I mean, okay, weird. Yes, we're the same age, but like we're the generation of people that were born in the era of nostalgia. You know, think that the 90s is when people were nostalgic. Yeah, about the 80s and 70s. So they were looking backwards, you know, and it was emulating what had happened before. We were born in a year where that was happening. So us now looking back to the 90s,
of course,
it's you know, it's like so we're being nostalgic of the era of nostalgia. So there's no longer any, you know, it's like things aren't actually changing. Like it's like they stopped, and now then we look back, and now we're looking back then. So it's just turning into this thing of like, what is real? It's like all like it's like, what is genuine anymore? Like, how can it even be that if we just stopped being progressive at a certain point culturally? So that's why
I feel like in art there's styles that always like come back in fashion. You know, it was the same in architecture, like
Of course.
in the 19th century. Like everything was like historical. Like they would make a like Baroque church, but actually like it was way later. You know, there was just like they were emulating styles, and I feel like that's happening in fashion, it's happening in music, and by mixing all these things, I feel like there's still things that are new, they're coming up, and just different approaches to things. But maybe it just doesn't seem so radical, you know, because they're just small steps. But I don't know.
Exactly.
I love my like 90s and tattoo vibe, so I'm like
I'm so about that too. I mean, I don't know, the reason I'm so like I guess personally I'm so like I'm really drawn to 90s music because it's like it kind of reminds me, I mean, because like I said, music hasn't been like a very pleasant thing for me my entire life. It's been kind of a very it's been a struggle in being like a musician, and like I think recently within the last year more than ever it got to the point of like, why the fuck am I doing this? You know, like what? I don't even like anything anymore. You know, I don't even like, I would go days like trying to find music that I wanted to listen to and just wouldn't. And then it was just like, so going back to the music personally that I like found, you know, like Marilyn Manson and Slipknot and all these like fucking, like all that shit, you know, listening to that was like, yeah, that's right. This is the shit that made me want to make music, you know, in the first place. So I've been going back to that stuff and trying to like incorporate that into the music I'm making now, just because like really like that is, I had to acknowledge that is where it started. You know, I have to like start thinking like that instead of trying to overcomplicate it and like think about it in the context of art criticism or some shit, which was never what fucking inspired me. But like also the other thing about 90s music and like especially like the rave scene, because like I have said this many times, but I think that like punk music died, and then like in the 90s rave and techno was actually punk music, you know, because they were actually rebelling against society, and like they were outcasts that were pushed out of like normal consumer world, and then kind of went and did what they wanted to do on their own terms, their own way. But also that existed because of how fucked up like society was back then, you know. It's like, and like that's how they rebelled against it, you know, like how like that's like that was one of Spiral Tribe's whole things, is like how they like would fight against like how oppressive like the police force became so oppressive, and they like couldn't do what they wanted to do, so they tried twice as hard to aggravate them, you know, so they could keep doing what they wanted to do. And it was always like pushing the buttons of authority and stuff. And frankly, how I feel right now is we're not doing that like anymore, and but things are getting worse and worse, and we have no fucking reason not to be trying harder or to like destroy the oppressive forces that we are, and using art and music as like to do that. Instead, what we do is we think we're doing it, we act like we're being political, we talk like we're being political, but the only reason we're doing it, like people in the music and art scene, is because it's going to benefit them, because it's worked for it's been good for their career. Like they think they're fighting capitalism, but they're really just perpetuating it, you know. That's like constantly what's happening, and that's why it makes me so fucking like angry when you see the way that people like use political identity politics
support their own careers.
Yeah, no, they're only supporting themselves. They act like they're helping people. They act like they're like doing the right thing for the scenic community, but they're just doing it so they sound good, you know, so it benefits them, you know. And like in the end, it could hypothetically inspire somebody else to try to like fight the oppressions that they're feeling and stuff. And that's awesome. And it should, you know, but at the end of the day, people are vocal. The reason they're so fucking loud on the internet is because it's them saying it, and they're the ones that are seen saying it. It doesn't actually, you'll never see that shit like helping people because somebody is taking it upon themselves to do it, you know? And they're just like, it's so fucking like awful when it's like when something looks like it's good and it's fighting oppression, but really all it is like just making it better. Like people like I remember there's this whole thing of like this club that everyone was like, yeah, this place is like misogynist and racist and shit, blah 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 blah, and they would like aggravate it so hard, and then that club was like, you guys are right, you want to play here? And they're all like, yeah. I'm like, are you guys fucking kidding me? Like if you're protesting something, you shouldn't do anything that resembles it. Isn't that the idea of protesting? You know, it's like no, you're just assimilating and fucking like and like being co-opted by that. You know, like the thing about capitalism, the reason it's gotten so bad is because when you're one step ahead of it, it's when you think you're one step ahead of it, it's actually 3 steps ahead of you. It's always playing you to make it to benefit itself, which is what people have ended up doing in this day and age because it's gotten so bad. Whereas personally, my thinking is I know how that shit has worked against me and people I care about and just society in general. I don't want to do anything that capitalism could possibly benefit from. I only want to do things that will destroy it and make it harder for it to survive, which is like what
that?
I mean, it's just like I always just think in terms of like how does capitalism work? Like
no,
what does it do?
Like, do you have a strategy to like destroy capitalism with your music?
No, I mean, not destroy it, but I mean, I don't hope to like wake up one day and be like, oh, it's finally gone, because I don't think that's going to happen. I want to constantly make it harder for it to exist, you know, and like always aggravate it and like have like a constant like. I mean, honestly, the only way I can do it is just to not ever like. To never let that affect, to never like start thinking the way it wants me to think. You know, I always have to like reject it. It's a constant rejection. It's like, it wants me to do this with my life. I'm not going to do it. You know, if I don't believe in like this, I'm never going to do anything that resembles that. You know, it's like, it's like
just having like integrity.
Yeah, totally, having integrity and like knowing that it's not going to benefit me in the way that I'm like programmed to think I need to benefit, you know. It's like, I don't know, it's kind of complicated to think about this just because it's like I don't actually know exactly how I feel. Like it's kind of a step-by-step, day-by-day thing, you know. I'm learning something new and how to be and how to exist in this world every day. But for the most part, it's like, I don't know, I'm somebody who thinks really fast, and I'm totally like, I don't think linearly. It's very crazy and chaotic for me in my life and in my head and shit.
Do you have
and like
ADHD?
that. Oh yeah, you kidding me? Yeah.
Well, I just met a lot of people in my life with ADHD because somehow I'm like drawn to that.
Right. No, it's fascinating. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm also a Scorpio if you're into astrology. But
yes.
Yeah.
It's your moon and like rising.
I think Libra and Leo. I don't remember which one is which.
I think I'm also a Libra.
Oh really? I'll send you my chart after this. But no, I mean, point I was making there though is that like that has been called a disability. You know, it's been called like you're not. You know, there's something wrong with you. You can't. It makes it harder for me to keep jobs. It makes me harder for me to like make money. It makes me harder to like maintain relationships. But it actually makes me. But what I've noticed is that I'm processing things much fast. Okay, technology is moving way faster than the human mind, and I think that I just for some reason have a way of moving at a little quicker of a speed than everyone else that allows me to understand that more. I can absorb information like rapidly, and I can pay attention to details as they're happening. But like that's what I'm paying attention to, not the job that I'm supposed to be focusing on to make money. You know, I'm noticing everything else happening around me. So like instead of letting convincing myself that that's like something that's wrong with me, I actually think it's like I've like tried to. I've come to believe and like thought about it a lot and like have been trying to like use that to my advantage instead of letting somebody make me believe it's a disadvantage, you know, that I'm disadvantaged, that I'm handicapped. If anything, I think that like I have something that somebody else doesn't have, and that and like I can, you know, if I can use that to scare them if they don't like it, you know, like it's like, I mean, yeah.
I just feel that like people with ADHD, they have like less patience with things that don't interest them. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's
That's
like you cut
exactly
through the bullshit and you're like, okay, I'm really into this, and I'm not at all into this, and you just like forget, and you can kind of pay attention to what's not interesting you. But once you find something that's interesting, you're like laser focus.
Oh, exactly. Yeah, and then you'll do it for like 5 days, and then be like, I'm on to something else. But
I feel like it's more normal actually than, you know.
Well, yeah, and that's you're right. But that's also why I think people with ADHD and shit can't like fit into trends, because they don't have time to think. Like their mind's moving at such a faster rate than everyone around them. You know, so they're like, I don't have time to fucking like to like entertain you people that like are just moving at like pain, you know, just watching each other. When your mind's moving that fast, you're really deep in your own head, you know, so you don't really, you become a little bit detached from people around you, because you just know that they're not moving at the, like that their minds aren't moving at the rate yours are. Exactly. So you're just like, fuck it, I'm gonna have to take this one alone. So I don't know, it's weird though, because there's a push and shove though, because like you might be like an ADHD person, but you still have like the same kind of like necessities and like emotional necessities as like the general population, and it's harder for you to have that, you know, or deal like be able to access that with people. And so it's like you might have, I don't know, it's difficult. Everything comes with its difficulties. And like that happens to be one of them, which is, I think, why it can be such a struggle for people. But it's because they've been made to feel lesser because of something like that, and I just like, I don't ever want to feel like there's something wrong with me.
Never.
I want to feel like no, you know what I'm saying?
Please don't. Let's go to the last question.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. What is one advice that you would tell your younger self when you were starting with music?
Oh my God. Holy shit, that is a serious question. Well, I do think about this a lot, and it's, I don't know. The only thing that I really think that I should have told myself, or wish I could have known, or just like, was just never to like think that anybody else had the answers that I was looking for, or to think that I need somebody else to like. Okay, so I think that I went into music with a serious lack of confidence, just because I've always had trouble with like I don't have confidence has always been kind of a problem for me. So I needed to find people that could affirm to me that I was doing something right, or that I got it, that I understood it, but really all that ended up doing was me trying to emulate something that somebody else was doing to get their validation for doing it, which really doesn't actually get you that, if anything, I think it makes people feel weirder when you're trying to like, do something you've seen them do. It makes them feel kind of like you don't, because especially when somebody does something from an emotional place, when somebody else from the outside tries to connect with something that came from a very unique place within you, and who thinks they understand it, it feels really like weird, and it's like, there's something nice that you can appreciate about it, but also in the end of the day, I think it's just something that's really, it feels kind of like either you've overexposed yourself and then you start regretting doing it, or you like are just kind of like when somebody really thinks they connect with you and you're just like, you don't actually get it at all, dude. Like, stop trying to understand me. Like, I think that I probably like made people feel like that, or like I think I was just young, and like things were way simple for me, and like I didn't understand how complicated things were for other people. So like when I was trying to like make music and as a young person and like had all these really cool ideas, I should have just stuck with them, and I shouldn't have ever like gotten to like cared so much about what other people thought of it, or like, tried to make, I just shouldn't have tried to make people like me as much as I did, because quite frankly, I'm just not somebody that I'm not somebody that everyone's going to like. If anything, I'm somebody that most people are going to dislike. So I shouldn't have ever tried to set myself up to be something that I just really wasn't capable of doing. It was more like, I regret just not looking at myself and being realistic about it, being like, you're not ever going to be a cool guy, dude. You just stop trying to fucking be what somebody else thinks cool is, like like I should have just stuck with my own, like just stayed within my own world and been realistic about who I am, and like actually paid attention to who I was, because I honestly don't think a lot of what started DJ Speedsick was me just being pragmatic and realistic about like, okay, who am I? Why am I like this? Why have things gone badly? What should I have acknowledged that would have allowed for things to have not gone the way they did? Like, why was I not being honest with myself, and what was I not being honest with myself about? And it's like, usually means looking at some shit that's not very, it's like, you don't think about it because it's not pleasant to think about, but you got to address it, and you got to deal with it. And like, for me, it's like, I was living in a city with a bunch of fucking rich kids, and like, who have never disappointed their parents before. And like, I come from like a pretty lower middle class part of the world with like, divorced parents and like fucked up, like who come from fucked up places themselves. And like, and like, I don't know, like, there's this whole theme of like hunting and the outdoors and shit with the early DJ Speedsick stuff. And like that was something, it's like, I have these memories of like gutting deer in the woods after hunting with my family, and like, that's not something that anybody that I like knew could share that experience with, So I never talked about it. It was like this weird thing that made me feel like I would scare people. And it's like, and then then it hit me. I'm like, why am I like so ashamed of that? Like, actually, that means I have something that everyone else doing something doesn't. That makes me like unique, and like to like think of things in that terms instead of like trying to repress and hide the parts of myself and that of like anybody that like that didn't seem to be what was supposed to was cool or what they wanted to accept in somebody. If I could have just like never had any shame about who I was, never tried to convince myself I could have been somebody that I wasn't, or done things that I just couldn't do, and if I would have just stuck with with like the reality of everything, things would have gone like much better. Like instead of them just now starting to get better because I just now stopped like listening to other people and like requiring other people's validation. And I just wish I could have done that so much earlier. Anyways, yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much.
Yeah, this has been awesome. Sorry, I'm choking on water. God damn, I'm dying out here.
Okay, I think I'm just gonna cut it there. So I'm dying of choking water. I'd like to.
Yeah, fuck yeah. And then say DJ Speedsick died in Wisconsin today after this interview. He was a bunch of tracks by him. He was pretty cool. He talked a lot.
Now you can listen to an excerpt of DJ Speedsick's track, which is called Untitled Demons Taking Over Me, which is actually a track through which I initially found this guy on SoundCloud, and I completely loved it.